If you think back to a person that you once knew, that you perhaps haven't seen for a long time, you can perhaps not remember what the person did or what the person said, but you can probably remember how that person made you feel. And the same is true for creative writing. You may not remember the plot details of a particular book you've read or all of the characters, but you would probably remember how that book made you feel. When you recommend a book to someone, you say, wow, you got to read this, it was great. And when someone asks you what it's about, you realize you're not 100% sure of the details, but you remember that it was great. You felt something, it touched you, and with your writing, you want to aim to do the same. Never underestimate the importance of atmosphere. So I'm going to give you 3 things that you can do, that you can use to add atmosphere to your writing, to add tone. I'm going to talk about how to choose your setting, your scene, and how to test to see whether that scene works, how to use imagery, and how your sentence structure can make that setting work or destroy it completely. So firstly, let's talk about setting. And the best way to do that is to give you some examples of what I mean. Say you're writing a romance story, okay? What you might do for your opening scene is place your characters at a large public swimming pool. The sky is blue, the sun is shining, there is no wind, there are no clouds. The water is warm, the music is good, the ice cream is flowing, the children are laughing and splashing and playing. And what a scene like that does is it makes the world very big. The sky is way up there and the horizon is way out there. And the feeling you create with that is one of possibility, of endlessness, of social binding, of friendship, of fun. Now, contrast that with a mystery or a horror story. Let me paint a scene for you. So, a young boy is staring down the rutted gravel road that leads from the broken down house towards the hills. The road is overgrown with harsh gorse and stony from lack of water. It is winter, and there are only a few hours of sunlight every day, and the sky is thick with black, rolling, low clouds. See, what this scene does in only a few short sentences is to create a feeling of isolation and claustrophobia. Things are broken down, not maintained, like the house and the road. And a broken down situation often speaks to a broken down sense of self or mental awareness. You can expect the child to not be particularly happy, and the low clouds and the lack of light further adds to that sense of claustrophobia, of being closed in, shut in. And the feeling we want to create is that of hopelessness and defeat. Now, if you want to know whether the scene you have created sets the tone that you want for that story, for that scene, for that piece, you only need to put yourself into it. Close your eyes, imagine, picture yourself in that setting, and then ask, what does this make me feel? How do I feel here? If the feeling you have is the feeling you have wanted to create, then good. Now let me talk about imagery. Imagery is really about what props you decide to place into your story, which further adds to the tone or the atmosphere. So for example, the rutted gravel road was a prop. It was imagery, as was the broken down house. All this added to the overall picture. This is where you describe just enough to create the mood that you want to create. So for example, say the boy is walking along a roadside. At one point, he looks down and he sees a discarded child's shoe. He just sees it. He doesn't comment, he doesn't really think about it, and he walks on. But what you've done is added one more thing into the mind of your reader, adding to that feeling of isolation and loneliness. Or, in our romance story, the clouds start to roll in a little, and just like that, there is a summer cloudburst. A girl shrieks and laughs and tries to gather her things, and just then a boy appears with an umbrella. Sure, okay, it's a cheat, because what is he doing with an umbrella at the pool, okay? But it's just imagery after all, and while he shelters the girl from the sudden downburst, and she smiles at him and he smiles back, you can get a sense that, metaphorically, He's a protector, a rescuer, someone that both shelters and nurtures. It's the little things that make a difference. Okay, so let's talk about how the sentences that you choose can aid that scene, that setting, or destroy it completely. The atmosphere, destroy the atmosphere that you're trying to create. What I mean by that is this: the shorter the sentence, the more choppy it is, the more pace you add, and the more tension you create. Short sentences speed up the narrative, while long sentences slow it down. For the romance story at the pool, the sentences will be long and flowing, giving the reader some space. In the horror or mystery story, the sentences will be shorter, harder, more packed to create unease. Okay, let me give you a bit of a longer example that'll wrap all this stuff and bring it all into one place. So we'll have a look at your sentence structure, your imagery, your setting, your scene, and how this adds to the atmosphere and how to drop props into a story to add to tension or to take away from tension. And I'm going to give you this example from a short story called Friday the 13th. Okay, the story is about a guy called Ricardo who gets called in to see a club boss and local gangster called Constantine after Ricardo's brother Sammy has caused some trouble in one of Constantine's clubs. It starts like this, or at least let's start midway through it. Okay. A chuckle came from behind him, and Ricardo winced again. Constantine leaned back and spread his arms wide. So, allow me to recap, just so we're on the same page. Shall we do that? Ricardo nodded again. I'm going to need a little more from you, Ricky, like words. Can you manage that? Yes, yes, said Ricardo, flinching as a beer was dumped onto the table next to him. Some spilled out the glass and he watched it spread, harsh overhead lights reflecting back at him. Let me see, said Constantine, placing the glasses hung around his neck over his eyes and opening a small notebook. Let me see. He licked his thumb and turned a page. Okay, he said, glancing at Ricardo over his glasses. This is how it is. On the night of the 13th of March in the year of our Lord 2020, last Friday in fact, your brother Sammy did enter this fine establishment and sit at the bar, there. He pointed to a stool at the bar, and proceeded to order a beer. Am I right so far? Ricardo nodded. Words, Ricky. Yes. Take a sip, Ricky. Ricardo looked down at his beer again. His throat suddenly seemed very dry. He took up the beer mug and had a sip. Fact 2. On the night of the 13th of March, he did strike up a conversation with one Consuela while at the bar. Yes, said Ricardo. Constantine looked at him again. Fact 3. He offered Consuela a cigarette and lit it for her with a cheap dime store lighter, then offered her a drink. Ricardo said nothing. Constantine seemed not to mind. Fact 3. The barman did then, and henceforth, cautioned Sammy that said Consuela was, in fact, out of bounds vis-a-vis she belonged to another and was not to be bothered. Yes? I don't know, said Ricardo. These are the facts, said Constantine, waving his notebook at Ricardo. I know about the girl, said Ricardo. I don't know if she was warned by the barman. Well, he was, said Constantine. Do you know how I know this? Ricardo shook his head. Milo, Constantine said to the man standing behind Ricardo. How do I know that the barman warned our good friend Sammy? Because Consuela is Fernando's girl. Okay, so let's see what we have in that short piece to create tone and atmosphere. Firstly, Ricardo sees himself as Ricardo, but Constantine insists on calling him Ricky. Why does he do this? How would you feel if you were sitting in front of your boss or the principal, and the principal was using your nickname when the situation was too serious for a nickname? Would you feel small, maybe belittled? If so, good, because that is the whole point. Secondly, we have a guy standing behind Ricardo's chair. We don't really see him, but he's there. He talks, he moves, he menaces. Because it is coming from your unprotected back, it adds to the immediate danger of the scene. And Ricardo, we know, is in trouble. Another one, the beer mug. It is put down in front of him and some of it spills. All he can do is watch as it washes over the table, lights reflecting, overhead lights. That means that he's frozen in place. And that is a sign of stress. The fact that his mouth is dry is another sign. All this is adding to the feeling of Ricardo's discomfort, okay, and his fear. He doesn't want to be there, and he's not in control of this situation. Constantine is. The notebook. Constantine has a notebook, Ricardo doesn't. Constantine turns to it and he reads from it, and Ricardo just has to sit there and listen as the facts are spelled out. again, Constantine is in control here. He has all the facts. Ricardo is alone and he's isolated. You see how this works? How important setting in imagery is? How it can make or break the emotion that you're trying to create? And note as well how the sentences play back and forward. Constantine's sentences are longer and more flowy because he is relaxed. Ricardo's sentences are short and choppy because he isn't relaxed, okay? The paragraphs are split up and they are short and they move quickly from one to another. So all that tension can gradually be increased and increased until, bam, something happens. So that's more than enough information for you to get started on creating scenes in your writing that have atmosphere, that have tone, that convey emotion and feeling. Remember, long sentences for light scenes, short sentences for dark scenes. That is a good place to start. Keep in mind your imagery. Just adding one small prop, a broken toy, a flat tire on a car, can say more than a whole paragraph. Okay, so keep tuning in as I expand more and more on this particular subject and help you to take your writing to a new level. If you haven't yet done so, hit subscribe, hit the bell icon, and stay up to date with all my tips, tricks, and tutorials. Also, there is a link in the description below to sign up for my newsletter. Doing so means that you get access to the ebook that I put out with each one of these videos, along with worksheets and tutorials, so that you can practice what you see here. So until next time, read every day, okay? It's the number one thing you can do to improve your own writing. Cheers.